So, I was 17 and I had really wanted to learn how to play guitar, and this guy I had a crush on offered to teach me how to play, so we decided to meet at a park one summer afternoon. I got there a bit early and decided to just wait at a bench inside one of those little hut things you see in every generic suburban park. Despite it being really nice outside that day, the park was pretty empty. I think it was just me and some people off in the distance walking around the lake, but nowhere near me. So I'm waiting on my phone for this guy to come here, and all of a sudden this lady pops out of nowhere. She was a fairly small lady that seemed to be in her 40s or 50s, and I specifically remember her being incredibly thin, and she was a little dirty looking, despite having her hair and makeup done well, and wearing very nice clothing. She walks up to me and tells me she likes my shoes, to which I give her a big smile and tell her where I got them. That was probably my first mistake. Then she sits down and begins to start a conversation with me, asking how old I was, where I lived, went to school, all of that stuff. Now, I immediately thought this was weird, but my hometown is super safe. The lady was incredibly small, so I knew I could take her down if needed, and she was speaking with an accent and didn't seem to know much English, so I figured that maybe she was new here and wanted to make friends, so I didn't want to seem rude. So I kept talking to her and just giving her vague answers whenever I could, and then all of a sudden she says, "You're so beautiful. I love your skin and hair," and without giving me time to react, pulls out her phone and takes a photo of me. Now I'm starting to freak out, but I tell myself that maybe this was just a cultural difference and wasn't actually that weird, so I just kind of didn't react and just hoped that the guy would show up soon. So at this point, the lady has been talking to me for about 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm getting pretty weirded out and trying to make my responses to her as short as possible in hopes that she'll leave, which she doesn't. Finally, the guy shows up. He's a big military guy that doesn't look like someone you'd want to fuck with, so I immediately felt safe and made it clear that I knew him. Because this lady was sitting so damn close to me, he thought we knew each other, so he went up to her and introduced himself. She did not like that at all. Her face kind of fell as soon as she saw him, and she tried to hide it, but still hardly spoke to him or acknowledged him, and instead turned to me and asked if he was my boyfriend. Him and I very quickly said no, and made it clear we were just friends. Well, apparently, she completely ignored us saying that, because almost immediately, she gets up and says, "Oh, you guys are such a cute couple," and pulls out her phone and takes yet another photo of me, but this time in a way that she got my full body in the shot. After she takes the photo, she pretty much immediately leaves, and I noticed that she went around a big corner towards the bathrooms, and just disappears. I never saw her come out of the other side. The guy I was with asked me if I knew that lady, and I said I didn't, and that she just started talking to me. So we both just kinda shrugged it off and said it was weird, and go about our guitar lesson. Having my crush at the time teach me how to play guitar was clearly my main focus at this point, and I pretty much forgot about the weird encounter, and don't really mention or think about it again until about a year later. Pretty soon after my encounter at the park, I moved away to Spain for a year for college. So now this part of the story takes place there. I was sitting in my dorm one night falling down a YouTube rabbit hole, and I stumbled upon videos of people telling their sex trafficking stories, and all of their encounters seemed very familiar to me. All of a sudden, I remembered the encounter I had with that lady at the park, and I decided to Google sex trafficking in my hometown to calm my nerves, because there was no way this lady was a trafficker, right? Boy, was I wrong. I Google my hometown, and immediately an article pops up about a woman being arrested in my hometown. It was back in September for running 2 sex trafficking rings in my town, just 2 months after I had met her. I'm thinking this can't be the same lady, and continue reading about how she kidnapped women and girls in my town, and held them hostage at a quote-unquote massage center, and would sell them in the US and ship them out of the country, stuff like that. And then I get to a mugshot, and my blood goes cold. On the screen, I see a small lady with a description saying she's in her 50s. I recognize her immediately and freak out, and FaceTime the guy I was with at the time to show him the mugshot, to confirm it's her. And without me saying anything, he says, "Oh, that's the lady we met at the park." Needless to say, I lost my shit and was freaked out for a day or two. The thing that probably freaks me out the most was that, as far as I'm able to find out, she was the only person arrested, and there is no way this lady worked alone. She was incredibly tiny, enough to the point that I didn't feel threatened by her at all when we interacted, and there was no way she would have been able to take someone without help. Yet no one else was found guilty of trafficking in my town, or anywhere nearby. I have since moved back to my hometown, and I truly think that moving away for a year may have saved me, although I still don't know if someone else has those pictures of me. This happened to my best friend around 2 years ago, whom I'll call Sarah for privacy reasons. We are both studying in the same city, only at different universities, so we are living in different parts of the city. One day, while Sarah was studying for her exams, she realized that there was no food in the fridge. So she decided to go out for a walk and do some grocery shopping. There was a fairly large and well-supplied supermarket close to her apartment complex, where she stopped for some fruits, yogurt, and noodles. She spent around 15 minutes in the supermarket, only to be greeted by a complete stranger outside who started having a small talk with her. He acted like they knew each other, although Sarah is positive she had never seen him before. Overall, my best friend is a very polite and tolerant person, but also very cautious of strangers. She described him as a short, around 5'4", overweight guy with a goatee and a wide, odd grin on his face. On the other hand, my best friend is 5 feet 8 inches tall and chubby, so she seems like a girl you should not mess with. She noticed that his fingers were somehow twitching while he spoke, indicating that he was nervous. The guy was at least 35 years old, and my best friend was 23 at the time. Immediately, she realized that something was wrong with this guy. First, he greeted her saying that he had spotted her in the area a few times, and then proceeded to ask her on a coffee date at a nearby cafe. Sarah was just standing there speechless, and politely declined him, saying she wasn't interested. It made him really mad, so he kept insisting that she should go with him. When she refused again, he angrily told her they would see each other again soon, calling her by her real name. She was absolutely dumbfounded by this, wondering how on earth this creep had found out her real name. She had no clue who this guy was. He didn't seem like a university student at all, but rather a construction worker, judging by the clothes he was wearing. A bunch of questions came to her mind. She was afraid that she might have been stalked by him, so she threatened to call the police if he didn't just give up his advances and leave her alone. Obviously, my best friend wasn't in the least interested in this creep, but if you think her story ends here, then you are wrong. The next thing she did was part ways with him. He stood in the same spot for a moment, and then, as she said, hopped in his car and started following her a couple blocks down the street in a dark-colored car with tinted windows. When Sarah realized this, she got even more scared, so she had to take some lesser-known routes in order to get to her apartment complex safely. The sun was just starting to set at this point. After some shortcuts, she managed to arrive safely before dark, but she was left feeling paranoid from the whole incident, wondering whether he knew where her apartment was. She never reported the incident to the police, although she vividly remembered his facial features and overall appearance. Fortunately, nothing ever happened after this, and she has not seen the guy since. I really hope it stays so. My advice for everyone is to stay safe out there, because sadly, there are a lot of narcissistic people who just can't take no for an answer. This happened when I was a bartender about 4 years ago, but I think about it often and has changed the way I operate throughout life. I now refuse to go to any store alone after midnight. For the story's sake, I will tell you that I was 25 and an attractive, slender blonde at the time. On a busy Friday night, I was bartending with the bar manager, and he had noticed that we were very low on some bar necessities after the dinner rush. Lemons, limes, bitters, that kind of thing. so I was sent out to go to a 24-hour grocery store down the road to pick up the odds and ends that we would require to get us through the weekend. I picked up everything that was asked of me without trouble at the store until I got to the liquor aisle. There were two country-looking guys that were probably around my age in the aisle, and they were staring at me and whispering to each other in a way that made me uncomfortable, as I assumed they were making comments about me. All pretty innocent so far. Before they could approach me, I grabbed what I needed very quickly and power walked to the self-checkout. I really booked it out of there, because when you're a bartender, it's kind of like you were on stage and are required to be charming and interact with people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to tolerate unless you're getting paid to. I get to self-checkout, and hot on my tail are two guys. I'm scanning my stuff and they use the scanning station next to me. Now I'm able to get a better look at them. One is taller, muscular, and average looking. The other is shorter and more plump. They both looked dirty and their eyes were completely bloodshot. Not sure if they were high on something or had already been drinking for a while. They continued to stare at me and our eyes awkwardly met. So I did the pleasant Midwestern thing to do and flashed them a quick half-assed smile to be polite. The taller one starts trying to talk to me. "Hey, looks like you're ready to party, huh?" I replied with something like, "Yeah, something like that. It's not for me though." They walk closer to me and ignore their responsibility to scan their items. "Oh, must be for your boyfriend, huh?" I flash the awkward tight-lipped smile again and roll my eyes slightly. "This is your hint that I am not interested, fellas." The taller one continues to try to talk to me. "You could come hang out with us tonight. We could show you a real good time if you know what I mean." I reply with, "No thanks, I'm good. I have plans already." Well, the tall one starts to get upset that his moves aren't working like he'd hoped, and starts using a more threatening tone and moves very close to me, like 2 inches away, but I ignore him, staying focused on the scanner. I don't think he had showered in a few days by the smell of him. He gets a little louder and says, "I see how it is. You probably only fuck doctors and rich men like that. You think you're too good for us. We can show you that you aren't. We can teach you a lesson." Now, I'm not sure in what context he meant, but it definitely wasn't good. Still not looking at him, I turn away so my body is blocking his view of my purse, which I set on the scanner, to grab my 4-inch pocket knife out of it and slide it up my jacket sleeve in case I need to protect myself. Acting like I am searching for my wallet. I do this, however, in view of the self-scan worker standing at her podium, and look at her with wide eyes trying to communicate that I do not feel safe and I might need help. I turn back to the machine and slide my credit card to pay, while the creepy and hostile guys are practically standing on top of me. The machine malfunctions and starts beeping. The lady worker comes over immediately, and the guys standing next to me change their expressions from, "I am planning to torture you for a couple of days and toss your body in a creek," to, "Just your friendly good old country boys making polite conversation over here." They actually tried to act like I knew them, and we were friends so the worker wouldn't be alerted to their ill intentions. They tried joking with the worker, saying I was stealing something, and that's why the machine went off. The worker was definitely not buying it. She was a 6+ foot tall woman with some muscle on her, by the way. I wouldn't mess with her on my best day. Anyways, she presses a few buttons on the screen, shooting the guys a very unimpressed look when they were trying to act charming, and cancels the order completely. She turns to me and says, "I am sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am. This machine seems to not be working correctly. Why don't you gather your things and I'll ring you up at an actual register." She puts her hand on my back and gives me a wide-eyed look like I gave her a minute earlier, letting me know that she sees I am in danger. I pick up my things to follow her to a register that is near the security office. The guys linger around the self-scan, still glaring at me, and eventually complete their purchase, but stand at the exit, assuming they are waiting for me. I felt like I would be walking to my death if I made my exit in that moment. The worker keeps a close eye on the guys and scans my items. As she's scanning, she tells me there really wasn't anything wrong with the machine I was using. It just misread my credit card. She said, "I had a bad feeling about those guys from the moment they walked in, and then I saw them getting aggressive towards you. I already rang security to be ready to walk out to the parking lot and make sure you left safely when you were ready to leave. Then I saw you take that knife out and put it up your sleeve, getting ready to protect yourself. As much as I'd like to see you show them, they picked the wrong chick to mess with. I'm glad I was able to pull you aside and make sure you are safe. I see them waiting by the door for you. I'll just keep pressing buttons on the screen and act like I'm having trouble with your order until they give up and go outside. Our security officer and I are both still going to escort you to your vehicle when you leave." I thought to myself, this woman seriously deserves a raise. I thanked her over and over again and told her what they said to me, and I was getting afraid because I don't know what these guys are capable of. As I'm talking to her, my bar manager calls me to see what's taking so long. I explained what was happening, and he obviously was very concerned and ready to come up there himself and kick some ass. By the time I hang up, the guys had given up and walked out to the parking lot. The worker said to give it another few minutes because she had a feeling they may still be in the parking lot waiting for me to walk out and see which vehicle was mine so they could follow me. My instant thought was, no way, they have to be gone by now. I was wrong. The worker and security guard escort me out, and as it was after midnight, you can imagine how empty the parking lot was. Towards the back of the lot, there sat an old big pickup truck with the lights on pointed towards the store. It was a huge parking lot, and it wouldn't have made sense for them to initially park like that, so I'm assuming they moved the truck to sit that way so they had a full view of when I exited the store to go to my vehicle. It was like being stalked by very hungry lions. When I unlocked my car and they saw that me, the worker, and the guard were looking directly at them, and that I wasn't getting in my car until we saw them leave, they then peeled out of the parking lot. I mean, they seriously did a burnout to establish that they were pissed and trying to intimidate us or something. Poor creeps didn't get their way. I thanked the worker and the guard over and over again, as I am certain they had just saved my life, or at least saved me from having to live with whatever those guys are planning on doing to me. I did write a long letter to the store manager and to their corporate location describing how their employees protected me and how grateful I was. I really hope that earned her a promotion, bonus, or a raise. Needless to say, I do not go late night shopping by myself anymore. I never will again. When I was young, let's say around 8 or 11, my sister, who was 7 years older, would babysit me when my parents were out. At the time, she smoked a lot, and my parents made her smoke outside, of course, so I'd follow her outside into the carport and play around, annoy her and such. One day, my sister notices a car at the end of the driveway, just sitting in the road. It's a white SUV with a bike rack on top. It has the most tinted windows I had ever seen. You could not see in from the outside. It sat there until she went inside, then would drive to the end of the road and sit at the church parking lot and wait. It would wait until she'd come out again for another smoke, and it would repeat this. Odd, but my sister is a brave lady and just kind of ignored it. That is, until the day while my parents were out again, and it returned. It would sit at the end of the driveway and just watch. I don't know what the driver was doing, but he was watching my sister. If I didn't go out, I'd watch from the window, and it would just sit there and watch my sister. She told my father, who was a sheriff deputy at the time, and he called the cops and made a complaint. They showed up, looked around, but the SUV was nowhere to be seen. Months went by, and nothing. Then one day, a good 9 months after this had all started, and around 4 months since the last sighting, it was back. It had become a regular occurrence. Another day, my sister was outside doing her nasty habit, and sure enough, the car comes. This time we were alone as usual, and she decides she's had enough. She tells me to stay in the carport, and she's going to go confront them. She starts walking towards the SUV, and halfway down the driveway, she would later remark to us, "I felt utter terror, like I knew if I went any further, I was dead. I was paralyzed by pure fear." She turned around and went inside. Finally, the family car was in the shop for some kind of issue, so we were all stuck at home for a night and had to get delivery, etc. While my parents are home, my sister goes outside to smoke. I go outside with her, and eventually the SUV shows up. She tells me to run inside and tell my father, so I do. My dad promptly gets his gun and starts briskly walking down the driveway with it in hand in the direction of the SUV, but not leveled towards it. The SUV floored it down the road and peeled out onto the nearby large highway. My dad, being a cop, noted the year and model and distinguishing features. The most concerning thing, the license plate had been covered in duct tape. We never saw it again, and my sister just kind of shrugs it off now.